Greg Longini, the Board Secretary of the Chicago Transit Board. On October 7th of this year, the Chicago Transit Authority Office of the Secretary issued a notice of change format for meetings of the Chicago Transit Board scheduled for October 14th, 2022 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There is currently in effect a statewide disaster declaration as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Longini, the Board Secretary of the Chicago Transit Board since the start of the pandemic. Pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, virtual public meetings are permitted while the disaster proclamation remains in effect. Because the governor's disaster proclamation remains in effect in the state of Illinois, the meetings on October 14th, 2022 are being held electronically or virtually for members of the public. We are now ready to begin the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Chairman Miller. Chairman Miller?
I believe Chairman Miller just dropped off. Stand by.
All right, let's wait for you to get him back on then. I looked at original.
Director Miller is rejoining right now.
The original. I'll take it. Okay. As soon as we're done here.
Okay.
That's okay.
Right.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Hello?
All the dates. And, Chairman Miller, you're back on.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah.
We can start the Strategic Planning Committee meeting whenever you're ready, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the October the 14th meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Would the Secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Director Lee.
Present.
Director Jha.
Present.
Director Ortiz.
Here.
Director Barkley has stepped away for a few minutes. Chairman Miller.
Here.
Director Silva is joining the meeting as well. And Director Jakes will not be here today. We have a quorum with 4 members of the committee present right now. We can start the meeting. Director Miller.
Thank you, Greg. Our first order of business is the approval of the September the 14th, 2022 committee minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Moved by Director Jha, seconded by Director Ortiz. Director Lee?
Yes.
You're voting yes, Director Lee?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry.
okay. Director Jha?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
We have the minutes passed, sir, with 4 yes votes.
Okay. Our next order of business is the new fare box procurement presentation. Molly Poppy.
Good morning, Chairman Miller and directors. I'm Molly Poppy. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at CTA, and I'm here to present on the new fare box initiative that we are seeking favorable approval from today. Next slide. So a little bit of background just to start and talk a little bit about the vision and our vision for the future of fare collection. We have been a leader in fare collection since we began the Ventura system over 10 years ago. And in recent years, we've really been looking for the opportunity to build on that investment and look for more ways to modernize, to integrate, and create a more seamless fare systems. Some of the goals of our fare collection systems globally that involves both Ventra and the fare box is we want to make sure we have a high quality and frictionless customer experience. We want to make sure that we have a more comprehensive and personalized customer engagement. We want to establish an ecosystem of strategic partnerships that ensures that we can be integrated both with other mobility partners and also leaders in the technology industry. We want to create a seamless experience that emphasizes being proactive with our customers, ensuring that they understand how to use our system, that the fare collection is easy for them to use and not reactive. We're not fixing problems on the back end because they couldn't understand or couldn't make it work. And critically, we also want to make sure that it's an accessible service for all travelers, no matter how they pay, no matter who they are. So with that in mind, we really wanted to move forward with a fare box procurement and a fare box installation that has those goals in mind and really is builds on that vision. Next slide. Just to give a little bit of I guess, history on where we started and what we've done more recently. The fare boxes that we have today, those were installed in the early 1990s. They were a completely standalone system on the bus. They're fully mechanical and they are totally standalone. Additionally, on fare collection in 1997, we added the mag stripes, and then we added the Chicago card or Chicago Plus card in 2001, which was really the precursor to Ventra. In 2013 and 2014, we transitioned to Ventra, which was the first and largest account-based transit fare collection system in the country. Since then, we've really been focused on how do we continue to expand the Ventra ecosystem and how do we prepare to transition our fare boxes to be more modern and to be a system that's integrated with the rest of the bus, integrated with Ventra. So in more recent times, we've added some components that make the fare collection and fare payment system a little bit more seamless with the express vending machines, portable fare boxes. You all may remember a couple years ago, we launched the fully redesigned Ventra app, which collects $6 to $7 million every month in fares for both Metra, Pace, and CTA. And that Ventra app is also integrated with Divvy. We also launched the Ventra card on iPhone, Apple Watch, and Google Pay, which have been tremendously successful with our users who are really appreciating with the transition of COVID, of a more digital payment, contactless. They now have a Ventra card right in their phone for them to tap and ride with. Upcoming for us, we do have Ventra 3, as we've discussed previously and was approved a couple years ago. We will be completely overhauling the Ventra backend system and installing some new customer-facing tools for fare collection. Next slide. Just a little bit more background for everyone. The current fare boxes and vaulting system that we have today requires a separate operator logon. As I mentioned, it is really the standalone system on the bus. It is a cash and coin collection process that is very old. It's obviously 30 years old. That's a long time to be trying to run cash and coin collection. There's also not any real-time reporting, which can delay a counting process and does require every bus to be vaulted every night. So it requires every bus to go through additional time in the garage and is not nearly as efficient. We also have some mechanical components that do require constant maintenance. Next slide. So with all that in mind of sort of what's the vision, what have we done previously and where we stand now, I also think it's important to remind everyone of why we move forward with the fare box. We do know COVID has pushed us to more of a contactless digital payment experience, but we also know that many of our riders continue to pay with cash. They like paying with cash, and that is what is accessible to them in many instances. Currently, over 9 million bus rides are paid with cash each year. These are tourists, infrequent riders, and also individuals who are unbanked or underbanked. So we do see cash collection on the bus as both a critical component of ensuring accessibility for everyone and also a critical equity for CTA. Next slide. So with that all in mind, we moved forward with the procurement for the fare boxes to replace our 37-year-old cash and coin fare box and the vaulting equipment. The procurement and the process was really focused on ensuring that we maintained a cash payment option for customers, that we could integrate with Ventra and other bus reporting systems, that we provided real-time ridership and revenue information to the fair teams, to the innovation team, as well as to the finance teams and operations teams. We also were looking to generate operational efficiencies. This has to do with not having to vault that bus or vault the fare box every day, so we can be more efficient, have more efficiencies in those bus garages. And also, obviously, something that's 37 years old, technology has drastically improved over 3 to 4 decades. And so we're also just looking to build on the technology enhancements that we've seen in the last 3 to 4 decades to improve the accuracy of fare collections to deposits. So next slide. With that in mind, what we are putting forward today is a fare box provided by Scheid & Bachman. Scheid & Bachman was selected following a competitive procurement process, and it's based on our goals for fare collection. So we are putting forward, this is a prototype of, or a sample, if you will, of the Scheid & Bachman fare box that we would be looking to install today under this contract. Next slide. A little bit of background on costs. In project implementation, the overall cost is $41 million for 7 years. That breaks out to $30 million in equipment, software, and installation, which we anticipate will be a 2-year development cycle, testing, and implementation. There will also be a 1-year warranty period of $800,000, and then we will have ongoing maintenance and support provided by Scheid & Bachman over 5 years, which is $2.1 million annually. There are additional options to extend the ongoing maintenance and support for these fare boxes. The DBE commitment for this contract is 10.47, which does exceed the goal of 8%, exceeds the DBE goal of 8%. Before I turn it over to the directors for questions, I do want to turn it over to our general counsel, Kent Ray, who will read a short statement, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Good morning, Chairman Miller and directors. As you know, a competitor to the recommended vendor on this procurement has made public contentions by which it intends to portray CTA's procurement process on this contract as flawed. It isn't. The fact is that this unsuccessful vendor submitted its best and final offer late, after the time set by the CTA. Because of this late submittal, CTA is required to reject that submittal. We are very satisfied with the recommended proposal and ask the board to approve the contract award. Thank you.
So with that, Chairman Miller, any questions?
Thank you so much. Good job, and certainly timely. Look like you all took care of everything. The LDs with the cash carrying, and then this generation that don't carry cash. It looks beautiful and certainly timely. So yes, I support it. No question.
Thank you, Chairman.
Director Lee, do you have any questions?
No questions, just thanks, Molly. I'm looking forward to finally updating, and I always appreciate the commitment to accessibility too. So making sure that folks can pay how they want to is part of that as well. So, thanks.
Director Ortiz, any questions?
Yeah, thank you. No questions at this point. Thank you.
Okay. Director Jha, any questions?
No questions at this point.
Director Silva?
No questions.
No? Chairman Miller, then we are finished with any questions on this matter.
Thank you. Our next order of business is presentation on the Red Line Extension Project, property acquisition process. Bill Mooney and Leah Mooney. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and directors. Thank you so much. I'm Leah Mooney, Director of Strategic Planning and Policy, and I'm joined today by Bill Mooney.
Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer.
So, we're excited to talk to you today about another significant milestone in advancing this transformational transit equity project. And today you will have before you 2 property acquisition actions. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the background and provide some context for these. Go ahead, Herb. So we have made significant progress in the last several years, and in fact have made more progress in the last few years than in the last several decades on this project. This project was really originally driven by the community through the Developing Communities Project, which is now the Red Line Extension Coalition. And they placed a non-binding referendum on the ballot for the 34th and 9th wards in 2004, and it passed overwhelmingly, demonstrating that there was community support for this extension. Following that, CTA took on an alternatives analysis, which is really the first step in a significant New Starts project like this. The board selected the locally preferred alternative then in 2009, which is the current Union Pacific Railroad alternative. And at the time, and when the draft environmental impact statement was published, there were two options, the east and west option. Those were then finalized into a hybrid option, combining the best aspects of both into the preferred alignment, which was selected and made public in early 2018. Following that, we did additional analysis and we entered the project development phase of the federal New Starts program in late 2020. Recently, in fact, on August 12th, we were able to complete our final environmental impact statement and receive our record of decision from the Federal Transit Administration. And that is a significant milestone for the project and for this phase. And it also allows us to begin formal negotiations for property. Go ahead, Herb. We've been talking to the community about these potential acquisitions since 2016, just before the draft environmental impact statement was published. And this has really focused on making sure that we are providing a consistent presence in the community, that people who would be impacted by this know who to call. There have been consistent team members and really regular outreach. Since that time, we've actually developed a dedicated portion of the Red Line Extension team to focus on these real estate issues because we know it's such a significant part of the project and significant for the community. The acquisition and relocations team is part of our program management consulting contract. And outreach methods that we've used really since the beginning involve sending letters, certified and regular, but also bringing those same letters door to door and visiting with people. We've provided community meetings, but also office hours that are sort of drop-in style for people to come and talk to us. We've also been coordinating with elected officials in the area so that they can also respond to their constituents. And we have Spanish-speaking residents in this area, including Spanish-speaking community members that would be impacted. So it's been important to make sure that our materials are translated and that we have bilingual team members as well. The timeline for this, like I was saying, really started in 2016. That was when we had the East and West options, and information that we provided at the time was relative to both of those options. So it was really a larger impact that we were talking about. In 2018, we narrowed that impact and we re-notified everybody about both people whose properties would continue to be impacted and those whose would not be impacted. We did additional coordination starting in summer of 2021 when we were doing some environmental site assessments of parcels. And then we again had outreach in early 2022 this year when owners and tenants came to public events or we scheduled one-on-one meetings. Again, did additional mailings and door-to-door outreach in spring of this year. And then when we received our record of decision, we delivered a letter of intent, which is really the formal notification to property owners that we want to begin one-on-one meetings and begin this negotiation process. And again, for us, this is really about delivering an equity project with an equitable approach. And that is something that has been communicated from leadership and has also been really taken on by staff as an important value. The property types, just to give an overall picture. So this is a graphic of our alignment and goes from 95th to 130th with these 4 stations. So the parcels that would be impacted are 216. Of those, 103 are privately owned. The remaining parcels are either owned by institutions or railroads. And of those 103 privately owned parcels, which are both commercial and residential, 64 of those are occupied. The 216 parcels also breaks out into 182 that are actually required for the project. And then 34 of these are actually potential parcels that we would use to mitigate for park impacts. So we are actually incorporating a portion of the Fernwood Parkway on the northwest end here. And that would be then, we would return parkland green space to the park district as a mitigation for that. And so those parcels are just specific for that, and we would only acquire those through negotiated sales. I'll now turn it over to Bill, and he's going to talk a little bit about the rules and regulations governing this and our approach. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Leah. As this is an exceptionally complicated process, we wanted to take a moment and just talk a little bit about the rules and regulations around property acquisition in general, but specifically in relationship to the project. As the project's intended to be significantly funded through federal funding, the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Policies Acts of 1970 really sets forth the guidance on how we acquire the property, as well as provide for benefits for displaced property owners and relocations related to tenants. The goal of the act is really to make sure that all people involved in the transaction are treated fairly and equitably and receive just compensation for and assistance in moving from the property they occupy, in which would be acquiring in this circumstance. One of the key aspects of the project will be to provide relocation benefits specific to businesses and the needs of the businesses, residential homeowners and the occupants, as well as tenants that may be impacted by these acquisitions as well. Next slide, Herb. The other guiding principle is the CTA's policies around procurement, and specifically legislation that enacts us to acquire property for the purpose of construction and operational purposes. A board authority is required to acquire this property and to provide for relocation payments. This is typically done through an enabling ordinance, one of which you will be considering today. And that usually authorizes the chief infrastructure officer and general counsel to acquire and authorize payments on these properties. The aspect you're being considered for today will only be relevant to properties under $1 million. That is also the threshold for FTA concurrence on any property acquisition. And we'll also ensure that we are able to promptly pay the property owners as we acquire the properties, especially on relocation aspects. Separate from these properties being considered an enabling ordinance today, there will be third-party agreements for institutional properties that will be brought to the board at separate occasions. Again, and one of these is an item being considered today with the Cook County Land Bank. We'll be glad to take any questions on this presentation at this point or any of the topics covered.
Thank you, Bill. I have no questions.
Director Lee, any questions?
No questions, but just want to commend everyone on their hard work and making sure this is a fair and equitable process for everyone involved. So thank you.
Director Ortiz?
I agree with the comments that Director Lee mentioned. No questions at this time. Thank you.
Director Jha?
No questions.
Director Silva?
No questions.
Chairman Miller, there are no further questions on this presentation.
Chairman,
Sorry, President Carter?
sorry, before we move on, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge a significant milestone in this project. For those of you who have worked with me over the past 7 years, you know that one of my priorities when I became president was the building of the Red Line extension and really serving a community that had been underserved with regards to transit since, for the past 20 to 30 years. Taking this step to start the process to acquiring the property is a huge step forward in this project. And it certainly will send a message to these communities that we are serious about moving this project forward, and we're serious about our commitment to bring this project to fruition as we go forward. So I want to thank the board for their support for the entire project, and also for their support for this particular ordinance and the ability to start to actually go out here now and start talking to these homeowners and other institutions about the need to actually acquire the property to build.
Thank you for your leadership on that.
Great, yes.
Thank you, President Carter. All right, Chairman Miller, we can move on now, I believe.
Thank you. May I have a leave to place both of these items on the omnibus for board approval?
Chairman Miller, we do not need to put the presentations on the omnibus, but the next group, the next two ordinances that Bill is going to talk about, we will be doing it with that.
Okay.
Because our next order of business, sir, will be the review of the two ordinances in support of the Red Line Extension project.
Okay, well, all right. At the presenter.
So
Okay.
we can just ask Bill to make that presentation now, sir, on those two ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Bill.
Okay.
Please,
All right.
all right,
Bill,
great.
Leah, will you continue there? Okay.
Yeah, it got confusing with the presentation. So Bill, we're ready for the ordinances.
Staff is requesting
Yes,
consideration of two
thank you.
ordinances today related to property acquisitions associated with the CTA's Red Line Extension project. As part of the proposed 5.6 mile Red Line extension, CTA will be required to obtain property rights, including land, air, and subterranean, for construction and continued operation of the project. The first ordinance staff recommends approval of will designate for acquisition various parcels of property required for the project and authorize negotiations for purchase of those parcels and payment of relocation expenses. Staff is requesting the board designate the designated parcels for acquisition, which allows for the negotiation and purchase process to commence, and permit staff to acquire any of the parcels which have purchase prices of less than $1 million without further board authorization, with the approval of the Chief Infrastructure Officer and the General Counsel. Staff will return to the board for separate authorizations for any property that exceeds $1 million in value or when circumstances warrant additional consideration. Staff is seeking authority to complete acquisitions up to a total combined limit of $52 million for designated parcels. This ordinance would also authorize payment of relocation expenses up to $100,000 per instance and not to exceed a total value of $9 million for all occurrences. Finally, the ordinance would authorize the Chief Infrastructure Officer and General Counsel to execute right of entry agreements as required and institute eminent domain proceedings if necessary. Separately, staff is recommending approval of a second ordinance authorizing a land banking agreement with the Cook County Land Bank Authority for the CCLBA to acquire, hold, maintain, and transfer various parcels required for the Red Line Extension project. The agreement has a 5-year term, but CTA has identified 93 parcels of interest that CTA may take possession of at any time during the agreement. Per the agreement, CCLBA will be charged the CTA a monthly holding cost for parcel maintenance and administrative fees, plus a land banking fee that covers the overhead cost. The total authorization being requested under this agreement is $3,965,000. $3,965,800. I'll be happy to take any questions specific to these ordinances.
I have no question. Thanks, Bill.
Any other board members have questions on the two specific ordinances for Bill?
No questions.
No questions.
No. Chairman Miller, there are no questions, any further questions on the two ordinances?
Okay, now may I have leave to place both of these items on the list for board approval?
So move.
Yes, moved by Director Ja
Second.
and seconded by Director Ortiz. All right, Chairman, we can move on to the next item.
Our next and final order of business is a review of the ordinance authorizing negotiation of intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through Department of Family and Support Service. Presenter Tom McCone.
Good morning, Chairman Miller and directors.
Good morning.
Tom McCone, Chief Administrative Officer. As part of CTA's Meeting the Moment plan, we committed to focusing on assisting people experiencing homelessness, mental health crisis, and drug abuse on our system. To help achieve this goal, we would like to pursue an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago's Department of Family and Support Services to fund additional social service outreach on our system. In a recent census of unsheltered homeless individuals in Chicago, 43% indicated that they were going to spend the night on the CTA. People sheltering on the CTA continues to be an ongoing customer and employee concern. We have been working with our transit peers across the country, and this is an ongoing issue in the industry. As noted by the American Public Transit Association, transit agencies across the country are exploring ways to respectfully support persons who are homeless and minimize impacts to transit employees and the traveling public. Agencies have developed important partnerships with law enforcement, social service agencies, mental health experts, advocates for persons who are homeless, and others to approach this issue in a more positive way. We would like to add to our already existing engagement and outreach efforts to assist those experiencing homelessness on the CTA. Chicago's Department of Family and Support Services maintains contracts with various delegate agencies to provide services to those experiencing homelessness, along with mental health and drug abuse support. Through this agreement, our goal is to expand the number of outreach workers on the CTA who are focused on helping individuals receive the appropriate support at facilities outside of the CTA. The goal of this outreach is not only to engage individuals residing on the system, but to bring them to the appropriate support services, including shelter, so they are not using the CTA as a shelter of last resort. I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
No question, just a comment to say thank you all and a good approach for CTA. Thanks.
Director Lee?
No questions. Just want to say thank you again for the work, and also it's working towards a more safer, more accessible, but also a pleasant experience on the CTA. So thank you.
Director Ortiz?
I appreciate the partnership. Thank you for connecting and making that happen.
Director Jha?
No questions.
Director Silva?
No questions.
Chairman Miller, there are no further questions on this item.
Since there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Moved by Director Jha.
Second.
Second by Director Ortiz. We may now move on, Chairman Miller.
Thank you. Finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved by Director Jha.
Second.
Second by Director Ortiz. I'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jha?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Barkley, I see you're back. Motion to adjourn. Yes, I bet that's yes. Chairman Miller?
Yes.
Yes, that motion is approved with 5 yes votes. We are adjourned.
Order the October 14, 2022 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit and Budget. Will the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jha?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Here.
Director Barkley?
Here.
Chairman Silva?
Here.
We have a quorum with 6 members of the committee present. Let the record show that Director Jakes will not be here today.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of September 14, 2022. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Director Jha.
Second.
Second by Director Ortiz. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jha?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Barkley?
Yes.
Chairman Silva?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes, sir. Number 3.
Our next order of business is the finance report. Fine.
Good morning, I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'll walk through the results for August as well as year-to-date numbers. First up is August revenues. We see here that they're following a similar form of what they have for the first half plus of the year. We see farebox and pass totals coming in about $700,000 to the positive on both an amended budget and original budget basis. Reduced fare subsidy is coming in as expected. Non-fare box totals are coming in slightly better than expected on both an amended budget and original budget basis. So overall, for the month of August, we see positive variance to the amended budget of $800,000 and the original budget by $800,000. On the next page, you see year-to-date numbers. Again, following a similar form on the various line items, dropping down to the total revenue line. We see total revenues on a year-to-date basis about $6 billion to the positive on an amended budget basis and about 5.4 on an original budget basis. And it's also important to note that we see a positive variance over 2021 year-to-date numbers of almost $50 million, $48.8 million. With regard to our expenses, we continue to see positive variances here as well. We see on the labor line, it's about $14 million of positive variance. on both an amended budget and original budget basis. Materials coming in essentially flat, but slightly negative for the month. Fuel and power continue to be good performers for us, providing about $500,000 of positive variance on fuel and a little over $2 million of positive variance on power. Provisions for injuries and damages and security services coming in either flat or slightly positive for the month, and other expenses coming in about $3 million to the positive. So overall, for the month of August, we see positive favorability on an amended budget basis and original budget basis by about $19.2 million. The next page outlines year-to-date numbers for expenses. And again, following a similar form for the various lines, dropping to the bottom line here of total operating expenses, we see positive variance to the amended budget by about $93.5 million and variance to the original budget of a little over $126.6 million. If you factor in the revenues, we see net basis positive variance to the amended budget by about $99.5 million against the amended budget and about $132.1 million to the original budget. This positive variance that we see on our system generated revenues and expenses is coupled with positive variance that we're seeing on public funding. And you see that in the next section here. For the month, we see sales tax, which is related to June collections, coming in positive by about $8.3 million on the amended budget and almost $10 million, 9.8 on the original budget. PTF continues to perform well with about $2.9 million against the amended budget of positive variance and about 5.5 against the original budget. The real estate transfer tax slightly underperformed. We see amended budget of about $500,000 below our budgeted expectations and about $200,000 against the original budget. PTF on RET, which is a follow through on that, was about $300,000 down on the amended budget, but about $500,000 to the positive on the original budget. And then ICE coming in essentially flat, but slightly positive by about $100,000. So overall for the month, we see public funding continuing to perform very strongly. We see about $10.4 million of positive variance to the amended budget and about $15.7 million of positive variance to the original budget. If you flip to the next page, you see how this rolls up for year-to-date numbers. Again, dropping to the bottom line here, we see about $27.5 million against the amended budget of positive variance and about $66.1 million of positive variance against the original budget. So the fact that we've seen positive variance on both our public funding as well as our system generated and revenues and expenses, this has led us to draw at a slower rate than we had originally anticipated against our federal relief funding. You see here on the far left-hand column, we are expecting to draw about $6.3 million for the month. And we continue to draw against the three remaining grants of CRISA, ARP, and ARP discretionary. And we'll continue to do that on a pro rata basis so that we have activity against all three grants as we continue to move forward. You see in the second to the right column that we've drawn down about 40.8% of the total allocation, which means that we have about $1.3 billion remaining. It's important to note while we do have 1.3 remaining, as we'll talk about in the budget presentation next month, we do expect to use those funds. So those funds are continuing to be critical funds as we move forward. But we do have about 1.3 billion remaining right now. With regard to our three commodities that we purchase, fuel, power, and natural gas, we're locked in for where we need to be for 2022 and 2023 across all three commodities. We will continue to look for selective opportunities to continue to purchase outer year volumes for 24 and 5 for fuel, and look for opportunities to buy outer year purchases for power as well for 25. Again, we look for selective opportunities, and this has proven out to be very beneficial for us, taking that approach where we've been able to lock in at attractive prices in a very volatile and escalating market. This concludes my report for August, and glad to answer any questions.
in the federal funds, what will be our strategy, okay? How we gonna be using them, okay, to keep them, okay, for the next 3 years, as you say?
We'll talk in more detail next month regarding our budget. But again, we're expecting the use of those federal funds to help close expected or projected gaps for 2023, 4, and 5. So that was what the federal government originally set those funds up for. And it does provide us a bridge to allow things to return to normal or to get additional revenues online. So, again, those are very critical assets that we have that we continue to use as we move forward. But again, because of, public funding, as well as system-generated revenues and expenses performing better than expected, we do have funds that are now, expected to last through 2025.
In interest rates, okay, how will they hit you, okay, if you have to? Can you talk, okay, about the interest rate?
Absolutely. Great question. So with regard to interest rates, that impacts us when we go out for new borrowings. The expectation is that we would not need to borrow because we borrowed earlier this year before interest rates really started spiking. We were able to lock in at attractive rates. And then the long-term bonds that we issued are fixed rate bonds. So we don't have price sensitivity with regard to escalating interest rates on those bonds that we lock in. But again, we don't expect to issue bonds here in the very near term. We will need to continue to issue bonds in the future, but we have a little bit of time. And hopefully with that time, we'll be able to see how the larger market will continue to shake out with regard to interest rate sensitivities. Again, we're in a good position vis-a-vis other issuers at this point, not having to issue bonds in the near future and being able to issue those earlier this year was very advantageous for us to lock in rates while they were still very attractive.
Good job. Keep it.
Thank you.
Director Barkley, any questions or comments?
No questions.
Do any other board members or President Carter have any other questions or comments for Jeremy? No?
Thank you, Director Silva, for that question. And thank you again, Jeremy, as well, for your thoughtful leadership in this work.
Thank you. Chairman Silva, we may proceed to item number 4.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a pre-development agreement with Sterling Racine. Bill Mooney.
Good morning again. Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing a pre-development agreement with Sterling Racine LLC for the construction of a new training control center operations complex. In January 2022, the Transit Board approved the purchase and sales agreement with Sterling Racine, the sale of property at 120 North Racine. As part of the PSA, the board authorized the negotiations of a development agreement for the construction of a new control center and training facility to be located at Pulaski and Lake Streets in Chicago. Staff has negotiated a pre-development agreement to advance the project through conceptual development and enter into the City of Chicago zoning and plan development processes. The agreement includes a not to exceed value of $942,954 for the services and support of the project. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
I don't know. I don't have a question.
Do any board members have any questions on this matter?
No questions. Thank you.
Seems to be no further questions, Chairman Silva, on agenda item number 4.
Our next order of business.
Chairman Silva, we need to get this on the omnibus.
Yes. May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Joss, seconded by Director Ortiz. We may now move to number 5, agenda number 5, sir.
Our next order of business is a lease agreement with 89th Street Properties. Bill Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real estate staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to a lease agreement with 89th Street Properties LLC for property located at 1120 East 89th Street. CTA leases approximately 74,550 square feet of space at 1120 East 89th Street for bus, rail, and maintenance training for its employees. Staff has negotiated an extension of the current agreement through September 30th, 2027, including termination provisions that allow CTA to terminate the agreement with 120 days notice. The initial rent will be $27,956 per month. I'm happy to take any questions on this item.
No questions.
Any questions by any board members?
No question.
No questions.
No? Chairman Silva, there's no further questions or comments.
And now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Jost, second by Director Ortiz. We make
Our next order of business is a lease agreement with Metra, Bill Mooney.
Thank you again. Real estate staff recommends the approval of an amendment to the lease agreement with Metra for 2,250 square feet of property at Caldwell Avenue and Central Avenue in Chicago, which is used as a CTA bus turnaround. The amendment will allow CTA to continue to use the property through August 31st, 2027, with one 5-year option to extend. The annual rent will be $968 with 3% in annual escalations. I'm available to take any questions at this time.
No questions.
any questions by any board members?
No questions.
No? No further questions, Chairman.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Jost, second by Director Ortiz. Number 7, sir.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of cybersecurity insurance. Steve Wood.
Good morning, Steve Wood in the Law Department of the CTA. We are coming before the board on the renewal of our cyber insurance policy. This is an annual policy that is renewed every year with a term of November 1, 2022 to October 31, 2023. Our insurance broker, Alliant, and our DBE Paradigm marketed this new coverage to the insurance market. Unlike the prior 2 years, we have some good news on this renewal. Although only one insurance company provided a quote, it is a relatively favorable one. Our incumbent Beasley has offered to renew our policy at a flat rate, meaning a 0% increase in our insurance premium. They also are increasing the sublimits that they imposed on us last year back up to the policy limit of $2 million. So instead of a $100,000 coverage limit for cyber extortion, data recovery, and business interruption, those coverages will be at the full $2 million policy limit this year. Our deductible is still at $1 million, but our premium again stays the same as last year at approximately $108,750. This insurance policy continues to provide a number of important protections for the CTA related to cyber breaches or intrusions of the CTA's computers and network, as well as cyber extortion. We recommend renewal of this policy with Beasley. I'm happy to answer any questions.
How many bidders were in the, how many companies were bidding, for this insurance?
So our brokers contact as many as possible. I believe they contacted or provided information to more than 10 in this market. But again, Beasley was the only one who submitted a proposal to us for renewal. This is a very difficult insurance market, especially in the COVID era, as I'm sure you've seen in the news.
Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions by any other board members for Steve?
And now have leave to.
Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
And now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So move.
Second.
By Director Jost, seconded by Director Ortiz.
Our next order of business are 2 blankets railroad protective liability ordinances. Steve Wood.
Thank you, Director. We're coming before the board for approval of 2 ordinances related to our blanket railroad protective insurance policy. This is an annual policy that the CTA has had in place for 13 years. And the first ordinance is simply for the renewal term of November 1, 2022 to October 31, 2023. And the second relates to an amendment that we need to add to last year's policy. So this blanket policy covers all CTA contractors and certain non-contractors who perform work within 50 feet of any CTA railroad right-of-way. The CTA enrolls these businesses in our blanket program and prorates the cost of the insurance across the construction projects so that the CTA is not out of pocket for the cost of this insurance. Our insurance broker Alliant and our DBE Paradigm again marketed the renewal of this annual policy to the insurance market, and the incumbent insurer Aspen Specialty Insurance offered the best price for the renewal. The premium actually is decreasing approximately 5% compared to last year, which represents a reduction from approximately 23 cents per $100 of construction cost to 22 cents. This reduction is due to a generally more favorable insurance market for this type of insurance, and also to the final resolution of an outstanding CTA claim under an earlier policy. We believe Aspen will provide excellent insurance and excellent service and responsiveness, and we recommend renewal with this carrier. As I said, the second ordinance is for approval of an amendment to last year's ordinance approving the blanket railroad protective insurance policy. Last year, the Transit Board approved the policy for 2021 to 2022 with an amount not to exceed of $300,000. This amendment proposes an additional authority of $100,000, thereby increasing the annual not to exceed from $300,000 to $400,000. At the time we put these ordinances, these renewal ordinances together in the fall, we're estimating the scheduled construction projects that will begin in the upcoming year. And we assume that the scheduled construction projects already scheduled for the prior policy will begin roughly on time, but this does not always happen. So we build in a cushion into the requested amount not to exceed in order to cover a project that might slip from one year to the next, that might be delayed from one year to the next. Unfortunately, last year, two very large projects at the end of the last year's construction schedule were both delayed from the prior year policy to this year's policy, and that will cause the total premium to exceed the cushion that we included in last year's ordinance. So because CTA construction occurring during the current policy is more than we originally anticipated due solely to timing issues, not to cost issues, this amendment proposes increasing the annual not to exceed amount for this premium by an additional $100,000 to an updated amount of $400,000 for the blanket railroad protective liability insurance policy for the November 2021 to October 2022 policy year. I'm happy to answer questions regarding either of these two railroad protective insurance policies.
So is the same market okay as the last one?
These are different insurers. This is a different kind of policy. The cyber insurance really sort of stands alone. It is an international market. So Beasley and is in London, but our brokers market this to a different market. Again, internationally, it's just different types of insurers are in this space.
It's very volatile, the market.
I'm sorry?
Is the market very volatile?
It is, and COVID has really thrown a wrench into all kinds of insurance, property, cyber, railroad protective. So we're sort of now coming to the end where both in our cyber policy, we're getting a flat renewal, which is great, no longer huge increases. And in this, we're actually seeing a slight reduction in the policy premium. So that's great as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions by any other board members?
No questions.
Appears not, Chairman Silva. There's no further questions, sir.
May I now have leave to place these two items on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Josh, seconded by Director Ortiz. We move to the contracts now, sir.
Our next order of business is the review of contract number A1, a materials and labor contract for buses.
Any questions? No. We move to,
Questions?
no questions. We move to the next item, sir. The Bs.
Our next order of business is the review of contract numbers B1 through B3 infrastructure contracts.
Any questions?
Questions for me?
No questions, sir.
Our next order of business are contract numbers F1 through F4 administration contracts. No questions.
There's been no questions, sir.
Next order of business is the review of contract numbers G1 through G3 technology contracts.
No questions, sir.
Can you talk a little bit more, okay, about these technology contracts?
About G1 through G3, sir?
G1 through G3.
Okay. Ellen?
I can speak to the procurement. Sure. So for the G1 is Clever Devices. That is a contract where we have the automatic voice announcements, the automatic passenger counting system, automatic vehicle monitoring system, and the bus tracking system. So what we're doing is we're asking for an 18-month extension. We're asking for both the time, the 18 months, and for money. This is a very complicated procurement, so we are asking for that time. So we have sufficient time to go out and get a new procurement and award a new contract. We don't want to be left without the services.
Any questions?
Appears not, sir.
Questions. Our final order of business is contract number J1, a fare box equipment contract. Can you speak about this one, also J1?
Sure. So on August 10th, 2020, the CTA and PACE jointly issued an RFP for fare boxes, installation, warranty, maintenance, and support. We received 3 proposals to that RFP on December 8th. The proposals were evaluated by the committee members. After that evaluation, I determined that 2 of the companies were in the competitive range. Both of these companies came in to both PACE and CTA for oral presentations and live demonstrations. The presentations were via Zoom and the demonstrations were in person. The agencies had had an opportunity to ask questions of the vendors. We negotiated those things that we had in common. Both PACE and CTA had in common, but there are things that we have differently, such as we're requesting almost more than double the amount of fare boxes that PACE was requesting. We needed to interface with different software than PACE had, and we have different terms and conditions. So naturally, at that point, we break off and do the negotiations, each agency with the companies. After the negotiations were finalized, then PACE had asked for their BAFO apparently prior to CTA, but we asked for our BAFOs to be submitted no later than 3 o'clock on May 17th, which we then extended to no later than 3 o'clock on May 24th. We received 1 BAFO before the 3 o'clock deadline and 1 BAFO after the 3 o'clock deadline. Pursuant to our procurement policies and procedures, late submissions are rejected from further consideration. So at this point, then, we are asking the board to approve our contract award recommendation to Scheiden Bachman USA. Their proposal, experience, and ability to meet the scope of services best conforms to the requirements of the solicitation, and it's most advantageous to CTA. And they are currently have their fare boxes installed for Boston, Pittsburgh, Phoenix, St. Louis, Milwaukee, and Ontario.
Any questions?
Director Barkley, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, on this one, I'll ask everybody. Director Ja?
No questions.
Director Ortiz? No? Director Lee, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
And Director Miller?
No question. Thank you.
There's no further questions on J1, sir.
Our final order of business is contract number J1.
We just did that one, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, we just did J.
There are no further questions on the contracts. May I have leave to place the 12 contracts on the omnibus?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz. We now move to 7B, sir.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Barkley,
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion to approve the omnibus passes with 6 yes votes.
Finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Been seconded. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Barkley,
Yes.
Chairman Silva. That motion passes with 6 yes votes. We're adjourned, and we'll take a few minutes off before we start the regular meeting of the board. Good morning again. We're ready to start the meeting, sir.
Good morning. I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for October 14th, 2022 with the Secretary of Police.
Yes. Director Lee.
Present.
Director Ja.
Here.
Director Ortiz.
Here.
Director Miller.
Here.
Director Silva.
Here.
Chairman Barkley.
Here.
We have a quorum with 6 members present. Let the record show Director Jakes will not be here today.
Our first order of business is public comment, Greg.
Yes, sir. We have 4 public comment speakers. 1 dropped out earlier this morning. I asked each of the public comment speakers if they could please limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Our first speaker is David Dalka. Mr. Dalka, could you address the board, please?
Good morning. My name is David Dalka. I'd first like to remind the board that I'm owed about $750 from tire and other damage to property due to my living in the RPM zone at 1006 Roscoe. I'd love to resolve that permanently and put that chapter of my life behind me. The last time I was before this board last fall, I now live in Jefferson Park, and I requested the following things at that time. I requested that a full-time security guard be placed in Jefferson Park so that there wasn't homeless people in the station that's shared by Pace, Metra, and the CTA. I discussed the lack of frequency of Blue Line service at that time, and I discussed a proposal to request that the City Council work with this body to increase the fine for smoking and vaping to $5,000 per occurrence. It's my unfortunate duty to report that none of these things have been rectified nor achieved in the following 1 year, and I would like to once again repeat my request to the board to do these things, especially the smoking and vaping. That's become literally an every single time I'm on the train, every single car occurrence. In regards to service, the Blue Line is now running at least double the amount of time between trains that used to. The Blue Line has no alternatives like the east side of town does, or if the red line doesn't work, you can hop on the brown line or the purple line or whatever on the east side there. And I beg the board to find a way to staff this fully before winter so that people don't get frostbite. In addition, with those Jefferson Park stations, those heating areas have been taken out of service to try to prevent the homeless problem, and it did none of that. So all it's doing is harming your customers. In regards to buses, I now use the 92 bus frequently. It needs improvements in service. It also needs to run later at night because it also serves the North Park garage where a number of your drivers work from. I've heard drivers get on the 92 bus and complain about the frequency and the lack of late night service on that bus. And I'd like you to focus on that one because I think it might be one of the reasons you're having a hard time hiring drivers. The Forest Glen station, I talked to one of the managers there recently. They said they're down 80 people. If you extrapolate the bus and train, we're down hundreds of people. And I just want to share one of my horrific bus rides recently. I was in Wrigleyville. I was about to board a 77 Belmont bus westbound. I arrived there. I saw a gaggle of people. I asked the person in front of the line how long they had been waiting. They'd been waiting 20 minutes. Once I got there, it took another 45 minutes for a 77 bus to arrive, peak rush hour, 6 p.m. on a Friday night. And then it took forever because there was the bus was overloaded to get to the Blue Line. And when I got to the Blue Line, once I got on the Blue Line, there was a stack of garbage on the train that I boarded, the type of stack you would see in the middle of the night. I don't know what it was happening, why it was happening at 7:30 p.m. But it took me 2.5 hours to go from Belmont and Sheffield to Jefferson Park. That's simply unacceptable.
Mr. Dalka, we need to wrap this up.
In closing, I just ask that you take immediate action to resolve these issues, please, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dalka. Our next speaker is Aaron Viles. Is he on? Mr. Viles?
I am.
Okay, please address the board, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Thank you so much, board. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Aaron Viles. I am the Director of Campaigns for the Electrification Coalition, which is a national advocacy organization accelerating transportation electrification to reduce the monopoly oil has on our transportation and the associated national security risks. We drive adoption of electric vehicles for consumers, freight, private sector fleets, and public sector fleets through policy advocacy and programs at the federal, state, and local levels. The EC is at the forefront of the urgent national shift to electric transportation, and we want to encourage the CTA to do more to shift transit bus fleets to electric due to the numerous benefits: lowering fuel and maintenance costs for cities and for transit agencies, improving air quality for communities, and reducing our dependence on oil. Cities are increasingly turning to transit bus electrification to combat the economic, health, and security impacts of our dependence on foreign oil and a volatile fossil fuels market, which, thanks to Russia, we are all experiencing very firsthand right now. Converting 100 buses to electric reduces diesel consumption by 8.8 million gallons over their useful life and lowers average life cycle greenhouse gas emissions by up to 60%. Electric vehicles have a lower can have a lower total cost of ownership than diesel, making them a better investment and more efficient use of public funds over time. Estimates we have seen indicate that approximately $40,000
you did really well.
costs each year per bus
Yeah, it was.
could be avoided by using electric buses. As folks probably know, federal resources are being made available at historic levels right now, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Illinois is slated to receive approximately $486 million in surface transportation block grants, $119 million in CMAQ funds, and $43 million to the carbon reduction program. These funding sources are complementary to the FTA Lono program, from which, of course, the CTA received $7 million in fiscal year 21 for electrification. Electrification of public transit is a critical step the CTA must take to meet existing climate commitments while protecting public health and increasing the livability of the Chicagoland area. CTA was absolutely a leader when the agency began testing electric buses in transit in 2014, but as of today, CTA is falling behind other major transit operators and expanding its electric bus transit fleet. So we just encourage the CTA board to be as creative as possible in advancing its timeline to electrify your bus fleet. The 500 additional diesel bus purchase is close to 1/3 of your entire fleet. And if purchased, these buses will be on Chicago's roads until approximately 2039, which locks in pollution and greenhouse gases and absolutely misses opportunities to electrify the fleet and make these valuable contributions to the community. So thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. We would like to offer ourselves as a resource as you work forward with your efforts to meet your climate commitments, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Viles. Our next speaker will be Dr. Howard Ehrman. Dr. Ehrman?
Yes, good morning. My name is Dr. Howard Ehrman. I'm the former Assistant Health Commissioner here in Chicago and a lifelong writer of the CTA. I really want to encourage the Chicago Transit Authority to join with other cities and states, including Austin, Seattle, New York, Los Angeles, Maryland, to basically ban the buying of new diesel buses and or greatly accelerate it. The cost of diesel is not just with the question of energy. It's not just with the question that it's a major contributor to climate change. It's also on the question of the actual health of your bus drivers and the people of the city of Chicago, particularly African Americans and Latinos. The African American asthma rate in Chicago is the highest in the United States. The Latino asthma rate is the second highest. Bus drivers all over the world, not just in school buses, but in regular buses on transit, are basically have a much higher rate of asthma, cardiovascular disease, and cancer secondary to diesels that are inhaled while they're driving, particularly when bus bunching goes on. Chicago basically lowballed compared to every other city per capita, the amount of money it asked for to basically electrify the bus system. If you electrify the bus system by 2030, not 2040, if you rescind your contract to basically stop buying new diesel buses, this will be a win-win for Chicago, for the residents of Chicago, for the lives of your bus drivers who will be more effective at their work. We also would encourage you to do the same thing you did in 2016, and that is work together to build these buses in Chicago. The same thing you're doing now with trains, since you basically passed that in 2016. There is a great need for basically people to work in factories in Chicago, getting high-paying jobs that are low emitters of toxic fumes and are making things like electric buses. Specifically, Chicago needs to get hundreds of electric buses on the road beginning in the next couple of years, and to stop buying diesel buses. This would be a great thing for the city. And again, school children would have less asthma. That's the #1 reason that children miss school. And workers would have much less asthma. That's the #1 reason that workers miss work. Finally, I want to just draw to your attention the fact that the highest pollution areas in Chicago are in black and brown neighborhoods like Pilsen, Little Village, Englewood, and the Southeast Side. Diesel buses contribute to this, and I don't think you want to be doing this. So this is a win-win for everybody, including building the buses with unionized workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ehrman. Our final speaker today will be Juan Calherano. Juan? Juan, are you there?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir.
Can you hear me?
Please
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Barkley, President Carter, and distinguished board members. My name is Juan Calherano, and I am the Director of Operations with HACIA, the Hispanic American Construction Industry Association, and I am here to talk about the importance of the DBE program, particularly DBE certification. HACIA is a 43-year organization in construction that since its founding in 1979 has advocated for the minority contractor. HACIA is an assist agency that represents 350 members in construction and construction-related fields. HACIA members work on private and public projects and engage in the planning, design, and construction of these projects. Around 35% of our members are certified DBE firms. We have another 25% that are eligible to become certified. We assist members and non-members with certification services. Of the 35% DBE firms, 45% engage in planning and design services, while the remaining work in construction and other services. DBE certification has been a critical tool for our members to be able to sustain and succeed in the industry. DBE certification has and gives them the opportunity to be considered as consultants and subcontractors in the various public projects in the state of Illinois. Some of the work has included working on CTA projects. These DBE certified firms are run and operated by experienced owners and staff who have worked on various projects around the state. These owners and staff have the skills required to perform at highest levels. Challenges arise due to a lack of opportunities if they're not a certified DBE firm. Federal funded projects require participation of DBE certified firms. These allow GCs and primes to consider these firms and provide opportunities. Some of the benefits of certification that I would like to highlight is on the marketing side. Oftentimes, small businesses don't have the resources needed to market their service properly. As a certified firm, they are listed in a directory for primes to easily search for the service needed. Without certification, they most likely won't be considered on public contracts. Thanks to the DBE program, disadvantaged-owned businesses are taken into account that otherwise may not have it. DBE firms are offering an opportunity to participate in business development capacity programs such as the CTA's Building and Small Businesses, a program aimed at growing small businesses through financial capacity lending. DBE certified firms are part of the Illinois UCP, the Illinois Unified Certification Program, which means that a DBE firm participation can also be counted towards the goal of agencies such as CDOT, IDOT, METRA, PACE, and CTA, therefore creating opportunities. DBE certified firms are often recognized as small business enterprise or SBEs firms, which gives them access to set-aside opportunities. And lastly, I would like to say that DBEs can participate in mentor partnership programs, which provides DBEs opportunities to gain experience, improve their business knowledge, and expand their scope of services. There are many other impactful reasons why obtaining DBE certification is important, but these, I believe, are the most impactful to a small business. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to comment on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Barkley, before I turn it back to you for any comments, let the record show that John Paul Jones of the Sustainable Englewood Initiatives and its Red Line Extension TIF Coalition has sent in written comments, which I will distribute to the board. And President Carter, speaking to Garland and Heather Armstrong this week from Iowa, and I wanted to wish you congratulations on your recent promotion at APTA. So they wanted to pass it on to you at the board meeting as a public comment, sir. Sure. Chairman Barkley, that concludes the presentations by the 4 speakers today.
Thank you, Greg. I want to thank all the public speakers that took time out to address the board this morning. At this point, I'd like to open it up to any board members who have any questions or comments relative to the public speakers this morning.
Thank you for reaching out.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the president's report. However, before I turn it over to President Carter, I'd like to extend congratulations to him on his recent appointment as the chairman of the American Public Transportation Association, an international association comprised of 1,500 public and private sector transportation organizations, which CTA is also a member. As the chair, Dorva will lead APTA's board in its efforts to advocate for funding, legislation, and policies supportive of public transportation, which will not only be a benefit to APTA, but also to CTA and to our transit region as well. Congratulations, Dorval. We support you and look forward to working with you under your leadership.
Thank you. And thank you, members of the board. I am pleased to give you an update on the progress that we're making on our meeting the moment plan, which is a follow-up to my commitment to this body in August. I will update you every month regarding the plan, events and improvements that we make, and the progress that we continue to make on the overall plan itself. And I am pleased to report to you that the progress on the plan has continued since the last time we met. As you may recall, our action plan is built on 5 key pillars. The first pillar is at the core of our most pressing issues, which is delivering reliable and consistent service, as you heard from some of our commenters today. The steps we are undertaking to achieve this goal and address the dual challenges of both improving service quickly and sustainably, and also to bring aboard new bus and rail operators to serve our customers. To help immediately improve rail service, we've made temporary schedule changes along our busiest rail lines. These adjustments, which went into effect in mid-August, had an immediate effect that directly benefited our customers. Instances of big gaps between trains, which we define as triple the schedule intervals or higher, have now been reduced by 60% on the blue line and 50% on the red line. These are significant improvements to our 2 busiest lines. Instances of intervals that are double the schedule interval during the morning and evening rush hours were cut in half as well. We know that these adjusted schedules will continue to help improve service, making it more reliable and consistent to our customers. And we look forward to more improvements that will result from additional and more comprehensive bus and rail service optimizations that we are coordinating with our unions, which will occur later this year. I want to assure you that we remain in the early stages of the changes that we envision. This is just the beginning. Further thoughtful, creative bus and rail service solutions will be introduced in the coming months. The primary solution to better and more service is, of course, more operators. On October 1st, in conjunction with our bus union, ATU Local 241, CTA hosted a successful job fair for new bus operators and bus mechanics here in our headquarters at CTA. We had more than 150 job seekers who were in attendance, and HR staff assisted with job applications, provided on-site assessments and interviews, and began the hiring process for successful candidates right there on the spot. It was truly one-stop shopping for us. I am very encouraged that the messages that CTA is sending are starting to be heard and are further bringing more individuals from Chicago and surrounding suburbs into CTA to apply for these jobs. These are good paying opportunities that provide the level of wages and benefits that support families in the neighborhoods that we serve and help the overall economic growth of the city as a whole. Hiring new employees for key positions is paramount to our continued efforts to right the ship, and we will be continuing our aggressive, multifaceted marketing and hiring campaign for the foreseeable future. As always, The safety of our customers and employees is our number one priority, and we are continuing to invest in our system's safety and security. This core CTA belief is reflected in our second pillar, enhanced safety and security of riders. As the board is aware, we recently extended our agreement with the City of Chicago for the Chicago Police Department's Voluntary Special Employment Program, or VSEP, which allows volunteer officers, off-duty CPD officers, to patrol CTA properties. This program is a valuable supplement to the efforts of CPD's transit unit and CTA's contracted security guard services, and I am appreciative of the board's support for the extension of that program. Additionally, CPD has announced an increased presence on CTA. So far this year, they have conducted more than 90,000 checks on our system and have issued over 2,500 code of conduct violations. On the topic of security services, I also wanted to touch on our ongoing K-9 deployment. We continue to make significant progress on the deployment of our K-9 units, with 28 of the 50 planned K-9 teams already being deployed. These teams are comprised of 2 officers, 1 K-9. Additional teams are being trained, and each week new units are being deployed on the system. I will continue to update this board until we have reached our full deployment, which we believe will happen in the next month or 2. The third pillar of our plan is to improve the customer experience at our facilities. And I'm happy to highlight the work we are doing to revitalize almost 30 more stations as part of our ongoing Refresh and Renew station improvement and modernization program. Through the end of the year, CTA maintenance crews will be making repairs and improvements at various rail stations around the city to provide our customers with a more welcoming transit travel experience. 23 stations have been completed with full scope, and 75 out of 92 stations have seen both paint and lighting improvements. For the benefit of our newest directors, I want to note that the results of the work we do through Refresh and Renew makes a tremendous difference. Thorough deep cleaning, new paint, new lighting, and other improvements and repairs not only make an older station feel new, which everyone can appreciate, but also makes the customers and employees who use the station feel even safer. Near year's end, we will provide a more comprehensive public update about the improvements our hardworking crews have done, and I look forward to giving you that information. A critical component of the Meeting the Moment action plan is Pillar 4, which is our commitment to upgrade our digital tools and improve rider communication. CTA continues to be focused on improving the bus tracker and train tracker experience for riders. And while the service optimizations I discussed previously will help improve the tracker's accuracy, we're also taking multiple steps to modernize these platforms and improve the prediction accuracy of these tools. In August, we launched a brand new, fully redesigned bus tracker website, and since that time, we started piloting a new prediction enhancer feature designed to further improve the bus arrival prediction information. For Train Tracker, we recently made some back-end enhancements to the algorithm and platform to expand the arrival data available to customers and refine predictions published at the stations. We continue to look for every opportunity to further refine the Train Tracker and Bus Tracker tools as we move forward. Also, to measure our progress and ensure transparency with our riders, last month we rolled out our Meeting the Moment scorecard, our online tool that tracks key areas of productivity and accomplishments that will benefit both our customers and employees. The scorecard will include updates on ridership and service trends, hiring, facility improvements, security-related initiatives, and employee investments, among other things. You can see the scorecard up on your screen right now. As you can see, we continue to have strong ridership growth across both bus and rail. And on September 26th, we hit a pandemic high for ridership, over 935,000 daily rides. Additionally, we are seeing progress with our service optimization efforts. We are seeing reductions on double and triple headways on rail, while large gaps in bus service remains higher than we want, but which we plan to improve with the bus service optimizations that we plan for later this year. On both bus and rail, we are focusing our service optimization efforts on delivering more reliable and consistent service by aligning our scheduled service with the currently available workforce. As we continue to move forward with those service optimization efforts, we anticipate our service reliability will continue to improve and there will be reductions in large gaps in service. We're also making significant progress on many of the other initiatives announced as part of the action plan, including over 500 tactile bus stop signs installed to date to help make the bus stop boarding locations easier to identify for riders who are blind or have low vision, and 323 bus operators who have been hired this year, and a substantial number towards our hiring goal of 450 new operators by the end of the year. To be frank, my goals for this agency's improvement are ambitious and require everyone to redouble their efforts, above and beyond what they would normally ask of themselves. More important, however, our action plan demands a new level of accountability across departments, and this tool will help us gauge the success of our efforts every month for everyone to see. It is my anticipation that this will be updated every month as part of our regular board meeting, and I will update you every month on the improvements that we are making. I do want to be clear. I am asking a lot of my staff as we execute our action plan, but I also believe they are consummate professionals who are up to the task and will not let our customers down. I do encourage everyone who is listening to our board meeting to visit our Meeting the Moment Action Plan webpage each month and to see our progress directly on the page itself. And finally, an update on our fifth pillar, investment in our employees. Last month, I updated you on our investments in rail station video screens in our customer service assistant booths. This month, I want to briefly note our continued investment in upgrades to the bus operator protective shields in our older fleet. For example, 100 of our older New Flyer buses are expected to be retrofitted with new shields by year end, and we have already completed 85 of those 100. And all of our new buses are already equipped with the latest infrastructure to protect our bus operators as much as possible. Since beginning the implementation of the Meeting the Moment Action Plan, we have completed 18 Ask CTA events at select stations around the city to engage customers and get their feedback. This has been a tremendous effort, and we will continue to explore additional ways in which we can engage our riders and our customers on a regular basis. We recently also invited our customers to join us in celebrating an important milestone, the CTA's 75th anniversary. On October 1st, while some CTA staff were here hosting our job fair that I mentioned earlier, others with several blocks east hosting our wonderful 75th anniversary commemoration. Though our customers rightly take issue with some of the challenges that we faced recently, many of those same customers also love public transit. And there are many reasons people fall in love with CTA. Sometimes they are people who are transit aficionados. Other times they are people who love buses and trains since their first ride with their parents. And no other time is that more important than when we bring out our heritage fleet and provide our customers with a window back in time and let them board and ride our vintage vehicles. I want to close with an issue I addressed in my City Club speech in August regarding the Meeting the Moment plan, homelessness. Like most large urban cities, homelessness is an issue that continues to affect our most vulnerable residents, and as a result, these people often seek warmth and shelter wherever they can. CTA has unfortunately been used as a shelter of last resort, raising concerns around safety, cleanliness, and overall function of a transit agency. Over the last few years, we've been working closely with the Night Ministry to facilitate outreach to people experiencing homelessness, but we know more help is needed. And it is for that reason today that CTA has brought before the board an ordinance supporting negotiations with the City of Chicago Department of Family and Support Services, or DFSS, to fund and secure additional outreach resources via their delegate agencies to support and provide services to unsheltered residents currently seeking refuge on CTA. I believe that Chicagoans who are experiencing homelessness are a group for whom very hard times got even harder during the pandemic, and we must do all that we can to assist them. I view this as an important matter for CTA, our customers, and the people who desperately need this assistance. And we look forward to working with them over the course of the winter to show both those individuals as well as our customers that we are committed to addressing and supporting as best we can the homelessness and mental health issues that are affecting our city. With that, I thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Dorval. I have a couple of questions. First, we talked about the public service announcement that we have cameras that are watching. Are we still considering implementing that?
Yes, we are developing now signage and additional information for our digital screens that will be a way of reminding our customers that cameras are located throughout all of our stations and our buses, and that you are basically being videotaped on camera 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, good. And the other issue is with the security. When someone is apprehended, how are we getting the message out to the public that not just seeing someone who commits an act, a criminal act under the CTA, but we're actually prosecuting and doing something about that?
Yeah, I have had discussion with our communications team about how we could be more proactive in showing the results of the security efforts that we're engaging in. That's also an effort that we're engaging in cooperation with the Chicago Police Department when arrests are made. It is my expectation that we will not only be discussing it more on social media as part of our ongoing efforts, but also using our digital media to further enhance our messaging on the steps that are taken to arrest and to address people who have engaged in inappropriate conduct on CTA, including with the assistance of the law department, starting to more aggressively identify those individuals who should be banned from our system going forward because of the conduct they engaged in. I suspect that as we move forward, you'll start to see a lot more of that information going out. We also are including it in any of the comments or press releases or press statements that we're making around incidents that occur. And so we are hopeful that the media will also start picking that up as part of the overall reporting on crime on CTA as we move forward.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to any other board members who may have questions relative to President Carter's report.
I have a question. I just want to say that thank you for the update. Really, really amazing to see all the progress we're making. When we talk about security and integrating with the PD, Chicago Police, we know that the community that gets targeted, how do we make sure that what we are seeing on the cameras, the actions that they're not just police driven, but it's more, I know there are other services. How are we integrating that into this? So we're not targeting, people who are already overly targeted in these areas and creating more inequity in the community. Are we also integrating that as part of this?
We are certainly focused on, let me say a couple of things. One, we have certainly heard from our customers about one of the things that they want to see on CTA is a more visible police presence. That's not necessarily mean, arrests or things of that nature, but just the visibility of police is a key part to the overall security effort that we're engaged in. And we are working very closely with the police department to make sure that they are being visible and that they are being seen. You might have heard in my remarks about the 90,000 safety checks or checks that the police are doing. That represents every time a police officer, and let me be clear about this, these are police officers in addition to the mass transit police. These are additional police officers have come onto our systems, have engaged with our customers, and have been visible on the system. We expect that to continue to grow. We also are going to be coordinating with the police department the use of the social services activities that we discussed. Clearly, homelessness and mental health issues are not a crime. These are people who need help. The idea and the strategy here is not to arrest them unless they do something that causes an issue or is a violation of the law in and of itself. The plan here is to help them get resources and to support them in ways that get them someplace that, quite honestly, is much safer than sleeping and living on CTA. I expect that you will start to see more of that activity in a very visible way. Our video cameras obviously are still capturing whatever may be happening on our system that's inappropriate. And clearly, if there was something that was occurring with our security personnel or others that we believe was not appropriate behavior, we have and will take action to address that immediately with the security companies that we engage with.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to say thank you for your leadership on this and also for the transparency and the opportunity to get updates and just have a set of metrics that can help us understand the impact of the work that's being done. So thank you.
I just want to join and also say thank you to President Carter for the update and certainly for the collaboration with the family service support, mental health, homeless, and we're tackling it in a way that is serving. And so thanks to you and the team for CTA taking such a bold step in this area. And congratulations, as already been said by Chairman Barkley.
Thank you, President Carter. Our next order of business is the approval of minutes of the regular board meeting of September 14th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Ja, second by Director Ortiz. Director Lee?
Bean?
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Barkley?
Yes.
That motion is approved, sir.
Our next order of business is executive session. It's my understanding, Kent, that there's no executive session today.
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. Our next order of business is board agenda items number 6A, presentation on the equity infrastructure project. Tom McCone and Juan Pablo Prieto will make a presentation.
Good morning, directors. Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs. I'm here this morning to present an exciting initiative that CTA helped establish and is participating in called the Equity and Infrastructure Project, or EIP. Next slide, please. EIP was co-founded in 2021 by Phil Washington, the current CEO of Denver International Airport, and John Picari, the former Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation, in response to President Biden's call to advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government and tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad through 2 executive orders. Both of these executive orders initiated the Justice 40 initiative, which pledged public recommendations on how certain federal investments might be made toward a goal that 40% of the overall benefits flow to disadvantaged communities. EIP had its initial meeting on December 7th, 2021 at the Carpenters Hall in Washington, D.C., with the goal of building a broad coalition of infrastructure agencies to realize the goals of Justice 40 using the bipartisan infrastructure law. The 5 first movers, which include CTA, set the tone for how we were going to collaborate, share best practices, and support each other as we look to expand the work that we were already doing. EIP will engage public agencies, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and the federal government to make sure we're all on board and moving in the same direction. The overall mission of EIP is to build generational wealth and reduce the racial wealth gap for businesses in underserved and underrepresented communities. How do we operationalize this goal? By December of 2025, EIP participants will increase the participation of historically underutilized businesses, or hubs, which include disadvantaged business enterprises, DBEs, and small business enterprises, SBEs, and create more prime contracting, joint venture, and equity partnership opportunities. We will all work within our respective agencies to grow the number of hubs, reduce the barriers within our contracts for these businesses to participate in our projects, specifically at the prime level, streamline our administrative procedures to make it easier for hubs to do business in multiple markets, create programs that support hubs to grow, and expand the number of agencies that sign on to the pledge. Here's a map that includes the 5 first movers, which CTA is one of. As you can see, we have a variety of type of infrastructure, from an airport to a water district, to a seaport, to commuter rail, and to, of course, transit. Since the first mover started, go back one slide, please. Since the first mover started, we have added more agencies such as the City of Denver, the City of Philadelphia, and just this week, 6 state departments of transportation signed on to the pledge, including the Illinois Department of Transportation. We've reached out to local agencies to encourage them to sign the pledge. Each agency that signs a pledge was asked to make measurable goals based on their buying plans and programming. CTA's commitment with EIP is to continue to create opportunities for our DBE firms through our capital improvement program. We launched our Building Small Businesses program in July, which will connect small businesses to capital sourcing, technical and bonding assistance, and back office support in an effort to support our DBEs and SBEs in their growth. We saw how successful the pilot was through RPM and are excited to see what we can do now that it has a broader focus. We will also use the best practices developed on RPM, like repeated outreach and breaking contracts apart, on red line extension, the Congress line improvements, all stations accessibility, and our other capital projects to increase DBE participation. We will also continue to grow our race and gender neutral SBE program that allows us to set contracts aside so small businesses can compete among themselves. As part of that commitment, we set aside our maintenance level construction program, or MainCon, which the board approved earlier this year as a small business set aside. Through our conversations with the first movers, we have seen that CTA is a leader in this space, and we have started helping other agencies develop similar programs. With that in mind, CTA is working on an agreement with the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, or SEPTA, that would allow us to accept each other's small business enterprise, or SBE, certification. SEPTA and CTA have similar, if not identical, certification standards for SBE, so it makes sense to grant reciprocity and allow firms to compete in other marketplaces. Larger firms are used to doing this, and it's part of what makes them successful. In order to meet the goals of EIP and Justice 40, we need to create opportunities for SBE firms to act like larger firms. Our long-term goal is to get other government agencies to sign the agreement and create a national model for small business programming. And now we'd like to show you the video produced by the EIP first movers.
Transportation infrastructure. Our roads, bridges, airports, railroads, mass transit, ports, water systems are the threads that knit together the tapestry of America. After years of underinvestment, President Biden and Congress enacted the historic Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, passed in late 2021, providing $1.2 trillion to rebuild and modernize the foundation of our country. But just as important as how we invest is where we invest and in whom we invest. Under the leadership of Denver International Airport CEO Phil Washington, the Equity in Infrastructure Project is rallying public agencies and authorities across the country, together with the private sector, behind a shared commitment to increase the number, size, and scope of infrastructure contracts going to certified small and minority-owned businesses. Our mission is to create generational wealth for communities traditionally left behind by including minority firms as prime contractors, joint venture partners, and equity partners in infrastructure projects. Just as we change America's infrastructure, we will change the American economy.
Businesses led by those from underserved communities must get a piece of the American dream. That's why we're leading a national effort of infrastructure agencies pledging to take action to support President Biden's goal to have more diverse firms fulfill federal, state, and local contracts. I'm proud to be joined in this effort by 5 first mover agencies representing multiple modes of transportation and infrastructure in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Southern California. and we hope more will join the cause.
The Chicago Transit Authority is the second largest transit system in the nation. The CTA Red Line extension will both improve transit access and offer new contracting opportunities.
At CTA, we believe that every dollar we spend, every investment we make, and every decision we execute impacts our riders and the communities we serve. And we govern ourselves accordingly when providing job and contracting opportunities, ensuring an equitable process.
The Port of Long Beach is among the largest ports in the world. Modernization projects pursued by the port will strengthen U.S. supply chains.
The Port of Long Beach is committed to equity and inclusion. Our mission, in part, is to provide economic opportunities to the people of this region and beyond. That's why we're among the first organizations in the United States to join the Equity and Infrastructure Pledge. Through the pledge, we stand together with our partner agencies to ensure that all qualified individuals and companies have their chance to join us in our work.
The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California is the largest supplier of treated water in the United States, and it's leading the construction of what will be the nation's largest water recycling plant.
We're actually providing wealth to our community members through this new program. We said, let's sign up. We want to be part of it. And this is the exciting part of really uplifting people. And this is what we do here at Met. It's not just provide water, we uplift communities.
The Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority is among the nation's legacy public transit systems. Its first subway station opened in 1905.
Who we contract with has always mattered to advance equity. Right now, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. By working together and being intentional, we can generate wealth for small, minority, and women-owned firms in the infrastructure space. SEPTA is not only committed, we are excited to take this pledge.
By 2025, these agencies will work to expand contracting opportunities to increase the number, size, and proportion of historically underutilized businesses, growing to prime contractors participating in joint ventures or participating in contracts as equity partners. And we are calling on other infrastructure agencies to join us.
The Equity and Infrastructure Project is supported by the James Irvine Foundation and the Social Impact Fund with participation of the NOAC Metro Finance Lab at Drexel University.
That concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for sharing the video. I've shared this before, and I just want to highlight my emphasis on streamlining this process, and just thankful for the opportunity to really help open up opportunities that aren't just local, but that are allowing businesses to have connections across the country and streamlining that process and opening doors. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
How are we going to move, okay, with diversity, okay, let's say like different Afro-Americans, Mexicans, Latin Americans, how are we going to push their opportunities?
So we'll continue to increase our DBE participation through our goal setting process, but also targeting our outreach to make sure that underserved communities are getting an opportunity to compete on our contracts. The board approved a contract to get our Building Small Businesses program a broader reach. So now we're bringing those resources and opportunities to those communities so that those businesses have an opportunity to grow as a part of this program.
President Carr.
Yeah, I just want to say a few additional words to what JP said in the presentation that he gave. It is not by accident that we are one of the first movers in this initiative and in this area. CTA has been a first mover in this area for many years, long before this initiative was started. And we've been recognized in our industry as one of the sort of cutting edge agencies when it comes to encouraging and supporting diversity in our contracting and other opportunities. I know that many of you have heard me say on many occasions that CTA is more than about moving people from point A to point B. It's about connecting communities. And one way that you connect those communities is through economic growth and economic wealth. And so I was very excited when both of my good friends and colleagues, Phil Washington and John Picari, asked us to be a part of this. I've known both of them for many years. I was in the administration with John when he was Deputy Secretary at DOT. Phil, I have known for a good portion of my career. And for those of you who don't know that, Phil actually is a native Chicagoan who grew up in, as irony would have it, Oak Elk Gardens. So our red line extension, which is something we just talked about earlier in this meeting, is obviously something that is very important to him. And I think that there's some irony that we're having both of these conversations at this board meeting, because the red line extension, I think, is a tangible infrastructure project that is showing our investment as an agency into a community that needs that investment. But it's also an opportunity for us to do exactly what the EIP initiative is doing, which is to not only make that infrastructure investment in that community, but use that investment as a tool and leverage to bring jobs and other opportunities to that exact same community in ways that will allow them to get the type of economic stability that many of us take for granted in the world that we live in today. I believe the EIP initiative is going to be a landmark opportunity for us. We are already working very closely with SEPTA, and we'll be announcing in the very near future an agreement with them that will allow for our DBEs and their DBEs to seamlessly work in each market to pursue opportunities and open up new opportunities for us and for SEPTA. I'm very excited about that. The Biden administration is very excited about it. I think it's going to be a model for something that will be replicated throughout the country. And it's going to allow DBEs a much broader way of access or level of access to the work that all of us do on a daily basis. I want to thank this board today because it's been your long-term support and in sometimes pushing of our agency and our staff to do better and to achieve more that's put us into this position. And I'm going to be very proud to lead this agency on a national-wide approach to ultimately achieving not only what we've gotten used to here in Chicago, but putting it on a national forum and a national stage where we can achieve that same level of success at a national level. And I'm going to be looking forward to obviously including the board and keeping the board informed of the progress that we make as we try to roll this initiative out and get more and more agencies signed up for it and more DBEs, SBEs, and other minority-owned firms engaged in and supported by and ultimately being successful in doing infrastructure projects in the transit sphere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I mentioned during the briefing, this is very creative and cutting edge, and I'm excited about what you guys have done, put this together. And I'm just looking forward to seeing the results of it. This is good. This is going to help a lot of small and minority businesses to get that extra opportunity to perform and to make money and build wealth. So thank you very much. Great job.
Yeah, I agree. I would also add that let's highlight them, not just financial reward, but also let's put them on our websites. Let's show the successes so other people can see, hey, this is not about, this has real impact. The benefits are real. I think just getting the word out there and highlighting these leaders who are leading these companies are also important so they can get more business, not just one way, but it opens up more doors for them. So let's figure out a way to recognize them, not just financially, but also in goodwill. And
I think that's a terrific idea, and we will certainly work to develop exactly that. I think I should point out the video that you saw there. It's a video that's being used by the project on a national level, but that video was created here in Chicago. CTA staff put that video together, and some of you who know Steve Mayberry may have noticed his voice as the narration of the video itself. So We have a very talented team here that is really good at promoting and supporting in a media world, in a communications world, the work that we do. And we will certainly make this a part of that effort going forward.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is a resolution in support of the project. I want to ask Greg to read the resolution.
Yes, the resolution regarding the Chicago Transit Authority's commitment to provide economic opportunities through the Equity and Infrastructure Project. Whereas the Equity and Infrastructure Project, EIP, was founded in 2021 to advance racial equity and support underserved communities and tackle the climate crisis at home and abroad through public agency contracting. And whereas EIP exists to improve public contracting practices by creating more opportunities for historically underutilized businesses, which include disadvantaged business enterprises and small business enterprises, to build generational wealth and reduce the racial wealth gap by creating more prime, joint, venture, and equity contracting opportunities for these firms. And whereas EIP works to secure commitments from public agencies to increase the number, size, and scope of contracts going to HUBs by facilitating access and reducing barriers to compete for business in multiple markets. And whereas EIP advances the spirit of Executive Order 14008, President Biden's Justice 40 initiative, a federal government goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and burdened by pollution. And whereas EIP seeks to utilize the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, bipartisan infrastructure law, Public Law 117-58, to build wealth in underserved communities. And whereas CTA, a leader in contract diversity, equity, and inclusion, signed on to the EIP as one of the 5 first movers, along with Denver International Airport, Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Port of Long Beach, and the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, SEPTA, to help shape the EIP pledge and identify initial projects of interest, working with the private sector, state and local governments, and the U.S. Department of Transportation. And whereas CTA's commitment to EIP will create opportunities for DBE firms through upcoming projects like the Congress Branch Phase 1 improvements, All Stations Accessibility Program, and Red Line Extension. And whereas CTA commits to continue to grow our race and gender neutral SBE program that allows us to set contracts aside so small businesses can compete among themselves. And whereas CTA is currently working on an agreement with SEPTA that would allow each party to accept the other's SBE certifications to meet one of the EIP's goals of facilitating access and reducing barriers for historically underutilized businesses to compete for business in multiple markets. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Chicago Transit Board hereby affirms the CTA's commitment to participate in the Equity and Infrastructure Project. Be it further resolved that the board recognizes the importance of advancing racial equity and supporting underserved communities through the CTA's current commitments in public contracting, further efforts to create more opportunities for historically underutilized businesses.
Thank you, Greg. I will now entertain a motion to approve the resolution regarding the Chicago Transit Authority's commitment to provide economic opportunities project.
Moved by Director Ja.
Second.
Second by Director Ortiz. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barkley?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes, sir.
Next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chairman Barkley. The Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery was called to order earlier this morning. The committee approved the September 14th, 2022 committee minutes. Committee heard presentation from staff regarding the new fare box procurement. Committee also heard a presentation on the Red Line Extension property acquisition process. The committee reviewed 3 ordinances, an ordinance designed for acquisition, very partial and property as required for the Red Line Extension project and authorizing negotiation for purchase, payment of relocation expense, purchase of certain properties, institution, intimate domain, processing if necessary, and execution, the right of entry agreement. An ordinance authorizing agreement with the Cook County Land Bank Authority to acquire, hold, maintain, and transfer to authority various parcels of property for the Red Line Extension project. An ordinance authorizing negotiation for an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Family and Support Service for outreach to individuals in need of shelter. The committee placed all three ordinances on the omnibus and recommend board approval of the ordinance. That concludes my report, Chairman Barker.
Thank you, Director Miller. Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva.
The committee met earlier this morning and approved the September 14 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee reviewed 6 ordinances: an ordinance authorizing a pre-development agreement with Sterling Racine LLC for the construction of a new training and control center operation on authority property located on West Lake Street and North Pulaski Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. An ordinance authorizing an amendment to a lease agreement with 89th Street Properties LLC for property located at 1120 East 89th Street, Chicago, Illinois. An ordinance authorizing an amendment to a lease agreement with Metra for property located at Caldwell Avenue and Central Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of cybersecurity insurance coverage for policy year November 1st, 2022 through October 31st, 2023. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2022 through October 31st, 2023. An ordinance authorizing an amendment to ordinance number 0221-111 to increase the payment authority for the blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2022. The committee also reviewed 12 contracts. The committee placed the 6 ordinances and 12 contracts on the omnibus. I recommend board approval of the omnibus. That concludes my report, Chairman Barkley.
Thank you, Director Silva. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Directors Miller and Silva.
So moved.
Moved by Director Ja
Second?
and seconded by Director Ortiz. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Yes.
Chairman Barkley.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes, sir.
Next order of business is the construction report, Bill Mooney and Juan Pablo Prieto.
Good morning, Directors, Chairman. Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. I'm joined today by Juan Pablo Prieto, and we'll provide our monthly construction update. We could flip to the first project. This is our Jefferson Park, Your New Blue Signals to O'Hare project. It remains tight to schedule and on budget. We are coming to the final edges of this as we have started the cutover at Rosemont East, which is the last location for signal upgrades on the branch. We can move to some of the photos relevant to that. So I've shown you some of the work going on out there with the preparatory work on the room as they've been building it out up there in the field work. So here's the actual room and its final terminations being inspected right prior to the cutover. And here's some of the remote technology we use with signal systems. So this is ultimately the third end systems we provide to our customers on train communications aspects and alerts that come off of the signal system through a system called QuickTrack. And this is the interface point where they are testing that interface. Our next project is our Irving Park Station escalator canopy replacement project. I'm pleased to report that we've completed on schedule and on budget with this project. We can move to some of the finished photos. So here is the new escalator on the Pulaski entrance, and you can see that new polycarbonate blue canopy up above. Next slide. And here's a bigger picture shot of that canopy. I really like the polycarbonate canopy. I like how it even on gray days, it makes it feel a little bluer in the sky and certainly more welcoming and inviting than some of the older canopy systems we've had out there. And so you can hit that and see that there. And I will take a minute to pause here. And Juan Pablo, I don't know if you'd like to provide an update on DB on this.
Thank you, Bill. This work order had a 20% DBE goal. The prime contractor committed to 20% and is on track to meet that goal.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our next project, our Kedville Edmond Sacramento substation upgrades. This is quickly coming to a close as well as we finish up at the roofing aspects at Sacramento as well as the courtyard repairs. We've got some photos of that going on. So this is the exterior transformer yard for Sacramento substation. I previously shown you some work around the wall being dismantled that had structurally been kind of compromised. And so it's been taken all the way back down to the concrete foundation. Some of the concrete foundations have been rebuilt, and they're starting to reset the brickwork for that wall. So here's a picture of that kind of groundwork. Next slide. Here's some of that concrete foundation rebuild work going on there. This is our non-revenue rail vehicle facility. This remains on schedule and on budget, and really excited to see us deep in the ground now. So we've got some photos of some of the grade beam work out here. So last month I showed you a lot of the rebar work being prepped for this concrete install. This is the foundations for the building walls and main entranceways. So here you can see kind of that grade beam fully poured in with concrete and then the backfilling of earth around it. Next slide. And here's kind of a step back. So we actually have a full-time camera on the site that we are streaming into the elementary school directly adjacent, so the students can see live activity going on the site directly across from them. We've been working in and out of the school kind of with the contractor doing presentations on the STEM opportunities that go along with construction contracts, but this allows them to have that kind of live feed understanding. We also get it ourselves to be able to check on the site throughout, but it gives you a sense of the scope of the size of this project. So that you can see on the far right side of the screen, one end of the project to the far left side of the screen, and you can, in relationship to the buildings behind it, you can see how large this facility will ultimately be when built. You get a little sense of how all this foundation impact that we've been talking about with the helical piles really are important in a building this size. This is our traction power upgrades at Canal, Tie House, Berry, and Damon substations. So we are into our foundations at Damon. We remain on schedule and on budget here, and we've got some photos of that work. So here they are removing kind of the last evidence of the old foundations from the original building that was on the site, and they had to clear some of the shared foundation with the adjacent building to make room for the new micropiles that are being installed. Next slide. And here are those micropiles being put in. So you've seen some work similar to this on some other projects, most notably probably RPM. And so here they actually drill kind of a series of small, very similar caissons, holes in the ground that they backfill with concrete, and then they all get tied in together as part of a top level cage that supports that facility. So here's that micropile installation. Next slide. And here's a closer view of that drill apparatus going in. This is our Refresh Renewed program that President Carter spoke highly of earlier. So we are at 23 of 28 projects in the major program completed for the year, and we are finishing up the painting on the last 20 or so stations in the SB painting program. And I've got some updates on some of those as we highlight them. California in the pink line. So this is that curb appeal approach outside the station. You can see the deteriorated kind of concrete edge of that station facade, freshly patched up and painted over. Next slide. Our beauty shot of the updated stairs. I actually think this is from a customer experience, one of those most notable points, because it is really in your face, and that difference, it really wakes you up in that first time you see it, and you really get that wow factor. Next slide. And here's Midway. So this is at Midway. As we've done in a lot of cases, we do have that interface between the rail station and the bus turnaround. The Refresh and Renew left the station and went out into the bus turnaround and dealt with a lot of the major interfaces out there. So updated the lighting, touch up painting. I think we have a couple other photos of this up ahead. Here you can see that the berthing islands, the ADA landings there, where they've touched up all the cross lanes, as well as the high hazard edges for the curbs. The bus operators get a great visual about where they're pulling in and locating. Next slide. And here's kind of that step back picture. So again, I think even our customers on the bus side are really noticing the impact of this program as they interface with it. Next slide. Here's an insight. So you can clearly see kind of the difference in lighting. So between the older yellow T8 lighting versus the newer LED lighting, and how much brighter and cleaner that white light look is, as well as all the touch-up paint and refresh kind of in that space. And our final up to date today is tied to the RPM project, remains tight to schedule and on budget. And major activities still are all moving forward. Our next generation signal work is continuing forward. Most of the major infrastructure work in the bypass area is staged on that stage 2 work in that North Mainline corridor right now. And we continue to press forward on the LBMM substructure and major elevated structure with the segments and track work. We've got a lot of track work going on up there now, which is really exciting to see. So we got some photos of some of this. So here's another example of micropiles that I just mentioned on RPM. So this is actually in the area of the brown line, where we actually are renewing a bunch of the historical structure where we interface with the tie-in. And so these are foundations that will ultimately carry the historical structure that remains in play there. So next slide. This is in the North Main Line stretch between Addison and Belmont. I've shown you some of that deck being built from the precast beams to the columns, and now they're starting to get ready to pour the top deck. So this will all be filled in with concrete and these rebar cages, and ultimately we build the track onto the surface. Next slide. This is at the far end of LBMM. So this is actually where we transition back to the embankment and the historical ballast structure. So here we actually transition from the segmental box to a steel structure with a concrete deck, very similar to what I just showed you on the North Mainline corridor. And here they are, they put steel beams in place and they're starting to build in the deck forming so they can start pouring that deck up there. Next slide. So this is for relay house that facilitates the middle track over near Winona. And so this is actually going to be underneath the structure. This is foundational work for that house that gets built on top of it and then connects to that middle track and the signal systems required to support that operation. Next slide. And here's some of our segment erection. So this is moving very aggressively ahead. It's the production rates in the last 2 months been really great. They've exceeded kind of where they were expecting to be production wise. This is in the middle track area where I showed you that relay house work as well, which is kind of interesting because they actually have to build 2 sets of segments, as they actually build the one for the middle track first, and then they actually slide it over on a metal beam into place on the middle track. And then they actually build the one for the mainline track thereafter, and then they move the gantry down to the next span. Next slide. And here is some of that concrete track work that we were excited to see going forward. So these are the concrete plists that ultimately our plates get attached to, and then the rail goes on top. So these are the ties that we use on the concrete version of this. And this is closest to that Ardmore end, working back towards the gantry. So this is immediately following up that work. Next slide. And is one of the most notable things in the last month is the CTA hosted the FTA construction workshop. And the RPM project was a flagship project for discussion in there. We presented on it, but we also hosted a tour for over 100 attendees, including the FTA administrator and President Carter and a deputy administrator who joined us on some of the tour. Here we are right outside the Von Travis building relocated. You can see the flyover in the background with a group shot taken from a drone. It was a warm day, but it was, I think everyone really took advantage of the experience and understanding kind of the lessons learned. And I mean, I'm really proud of the team who pulled it off, as well as just to highlight that the FTA administrator called out in the group on her. She was a tour of how this was a best practice for industry, and you get to learn a lot from the great work we've done here. We didn't just talk about construction, we talked about a lot of the great work we've done on workforce and DB outreach. We had a whole station specific to that, as well as the operational coordination and how complex it is building a project of this size and caliber around a moving railroad and in a very dense neighborhood. So I think we talked about a lot of great things that we've championed and led the way on that the industry is coming behind us on here, especially on the workforce and DB fronts. Which brings us to our final slide. So on outreach. So we continue kind of our regular outreach events with the 44th and 48th wards, regular connections there. We have been in the footprint of Gowdy Elementary very, very noticeably. The gantry's been in that area as we've been working with the school throughout time. They regularly are kind of having interface points with the community, outreach coordinators, as well as other portions of the construction project and exciting work that's going on outside them. Again, this is a school that did name the gantry contest and put the name of the Windy City Gantry on it. We hosted the FTA construction workshop that I talked about. We continue our virtual office hours, answering constituent questions as they come up. We participated in the Care for Real second annual community celebration event where we had a table there talking about the project. It's a great organization, does a lot of great outreach work in the community. And then we had our regular open for business updates with the Andersonville and Uptown and Edgewater Chamber of Commerce. And with that, I'll turn over to Juan Pablo.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning again, directors. Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs. CTA Diversity continues to meet with the contractor monthly to discuss DB and workforce outreach and compliance. We continue to send out opportunities along with the prime to the DB community so that they're aware of the trade packages and how to submit their bids. Open career opportunities with the prime and their subs are sent to our workforce partners, Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership and Hire 360, so they can refer interested and qualified candidates that meet our workforce goals. As of September 30th, DBEs have been awarded over $230 million between the design and construction packages. This accounts for 84 unique DBE firms, 32 of them new to CTA. On the workforce side, as of September 30th, 1,634 unique individuals have worked over 921,000 labor hours and earned over $53 million. That concludes my portion of the report. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Juan Pablo or myself on the projects?
Questions?
Oh, I love the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Great job, you and team. Great job.
Great job.
Our final order of business is new business. Greg, is there any new business?
No, sir, there is not.
There being no new business, no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit Board meeting of October 14, 2022?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Barkley?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes, sir. We are adjourned.